Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Kari Herrendorf, and this is a yoga therapeutic class to increase hip mobility. We're going to go through about 10 poses. This class will be about 20 minutes, but you can absolutely slow it down, make it more of a meditation, or you can go through the poses if you only have about 10 minutes. Eventually, once you know the sequence, you can go through it rather quickly and see your progress over time. So we will start in Tadasana and we will end in Tadasana. Come to stand on your own 2 feet. You'll need 2 blocks for this class and a blanket. Tadasana. So just feel the weight going down from the top of the head, down through the spine, through the pelvis, down through each leg. Hip joints are one of the biggest joints in the body. They are also the second most mobile joint. Now that might not feel true and real for you, which is why we're doing this class. It's going to target the hip all the way around. The hip is a ball and socket joint. So there's no one pose that's a hip opener, right? If you're opening it in the back, you're closing it in the front. If you're opening on the inside, you're closing it on the outside. We want to be able to move all the way around. We're going to have a lot of different choices when it comes to our movement patterns. And that's what real power is, right? Not doing the same old, having a lot of choice and a lot of space. There's no pain in space. So hopefully you're finding your Tadasana. The first pose we're going to do is Vrikshasana or tree pose. I like to bring the feet together. Now you can absolutely, use a wall or a chair for support. Step forward. With the feet together, there's less of a shift that has to happen over the feet. So fire up the legs. Not only is this class going to increase your mobility, it's going to increase your stability, which is strength to support around those joints so you're not collapsing and sinking in. So hug the muscle to the bone, lift the kneecaps up, press the feet down. You may even notice something happening in the belly as you really bring yourself into the midline. We'll start with the left leg balancing. So lift the right heel up and just add that external rotation. So just turning the hip in the socket. You can absolutely stay here, taking the hands on the pelvis, pressing down, reaching up through the crown of the head. And if you want to try balance a little bit more, you can bring that right foot to the left, or you can bring it up on the inside of the shin. Eventually, Vrikshasana, you may have heard it cued, where the foot is all the way up on the inner thigh. Now you're pressing the foot into the thigh, but you press the thigh into the foot. So we're building bone density in the standing leg as we're increasing flexion and external rotation in the lifted leg. You want to think that your hip bones stay level. And breathe. Draw the right knee forward, set the foot down. Feel the difference now, shifting the weight back to standing on 2 legs, and then we'll do the other side. Charge up that right leg, shift your pelvis ever so slightly as you're over the center of the right foot, lift the left heel. External rotation. You'll notice one side might be a little bit more challenging to find that external rotation, and that's where you would have compensatory patterns. And so for me, it would be the left side is my more challenging side. Instead of just doing straight hip flexion, see my hands stay level, you may notice or see in other people or your students, if you're a teacher, that they upslip the pelvis because they can't get that flexion, right? So rather, keep the pelvis level and do less. And then eventually, that leg will come up. But if you never ask your leg to do something different or your hips to do something different, they won't. Press down through the standing leg, hug the outer hip in. You're going to build stability around the sacroiliac joint. So hip mobility, when hip mobility increases, other parts of the body can stop doing the work of the hips, which might lead to like pain in the sacroiliac joint or instability or overuse or even down in the knees. And you can do an arm variation where you take the arms up, especially if you feel heavy in the hips, lifting up can really help. And then bring the knee forward and set the foot down back to Tadasana. Trikonasana, triangle pose. Take your feet around one of your legs length apart, okay? So that's going to be different for everybody. I'm going to put blocks on the outside or behind my feet. Take your hands to your hips, press down. Wiggle the waist long. We'll go to the right first. You're going to turn the left foot in about 15 degrees. And you turn the right foot out 90 degrees. Alignment here, the knee tracks over the toes. So we're getting external rotation in what's going to be the front leg, but we don't turn our torso. Arms up. Now as we're going to move to the right, think that your left hip's going to move to the left. So something you want, if you want to build mobility in the hips, we don't want to be rounding down in our back. Again, this is not asking for any mobility in the hip joints. You want to, then the arm comes down. So the block is there if the floor is far away. So you can see I'm making a lot of different triangle shapes. There's a triangle here, there's a triangle between my legs, there's a full triangle from the top of my fingers to both feet. Press down through the outside of the back heel. You'll feel all the muscles of that leg. And then the torso turns towards the top arm. Eventually you're looking up. Feel free to look down at the front foot, especially if the neck feels kinked or cramped, right? This is going to put the head in the right place, and then you turn the head either to look forward or up. We'll come up and go to the other side, so press down through the feet, pull the feet towards each other. That'll engage the inner thighs and hug the muscle of the bone, so to relieve the tension and overwork in the back. Arms up, spread your wings, turn the palms up, and then keep the armpits spinning forward, turn the palms down. Shift your weight to the right leg. So you're lengthening the left waist, lengthening the left waist, lengthening the left waist. Left hand comes down. Right arm comes up. Keep lengthening. This is going to tone the muscles of the leg. It's going to increase the depth of the groin. It's going to increase your mobility in that plane. Right arm reaches up, gaze towards the right thumb. Eventually you're seeing with the left eye. Otherwise, look straight forward where the chest is turning, or look down. Keep thinking the left groin is going to deepen, and you're going to charge up through the outer heel of the back leg. You'll feel length through that whole side. Lift the kneecaps. Don't hyperextend that's the front leg. That's a tendency. So even if you need to do a little micro bend there, so you want to feel you have the ball of the foot down. And then reach through the top arm. Pull the feet towards each other isometrically. Lift up. Turn the foot forward. And then heel toe or hop the feet together. Parsvottanasana. I will turn to the side. Right leg will be forward first. Nice way to measure. You can just step the foot back. Again, my back foot is turned in. So this time my hips are coming forward as if that left hip point is shining forward along with the right one. Do not hyperextend this front knee. Create the action. You're pressing the ball of the foot down and pulling the foot back. So the right buttock bone goes back. And again, you're pulling the belly. So this is training this first fold here in the pelvis. So you're not rounding the back. Hands on the blocks again. Blocks will come right underneath the shoulders. Now create the action. Pull the front foot back. Move your left butt over to the left. Pull the chest forward. And then the upper back does round, so you may be able to lower the blocks here a little bit. Eventually, the hands are on the floor, and there's no gap between the bottom of the belly and the top of the thigh. And release. So you can feel how this one really increases the length of the back of the front leg. Parsvottanasana. Let that head go. Eventually, again, the forehead is touching that right shin. Inhale, look forward, bend the front knee. Let's just switch our legs. I'm going to step my left foot forward, and I'm going to step my right foot back. You can take the hands under the blocks, especially if, so we're coming into it the other way here. If it feels like you have no space, take your hands on the blocks and find that length. So find the outer edge of the back foot, draw the kneecap up, move your right butt over to the right. It's counterintuitive. And then press into the ball of the left foot and pull that left buttock bone back, and you'll feel the spiraling action on the diagonal from the left big toe to the buttock bone. Chest forward, and then one more time, fold forward over the left leg. You can lower the blocks all the way to the lowest height, or medium height, and eventually you may notice again that the left knee is not jammed straight, it's actually filling up the armpit. The knee is a ball, the armpit is a mitt, and when you fit yourself, you're going to be balanced all the way around that left hip joint. That's why when you have the right, when you really measure up, the muscles will show up around the joint, and then you won't have an imbalance where you have some muscles that are locked short, or ones that are tight, or ones that are locked long but they're weak. So everybody's doing their own job. Look forward, hands on the blocks. Now come up, pull the chest forward, press into the back foot, and come all the way up. Parallel the legs. Coming back to that symmetrical position again, heel toe, or step your feet together. Just come back to Tadasana and just notice it. You really feel like all the muscles in the legs are really working. You roll the shoulders up, back, and down. Nice. And then we'll transition. I have a blanket, and I want to fold it. I'll show you. Fold it this way. This is going to be our pedestal, so we can really use it to support our pelvis all the way underneath. There. So we're going to set that up. It's going to be our next pose. First, we're going to do a little Anjaneyasana. It's one of my poses that I tell my students, if you only have time for one pose, this really gets all the way around when you do both sides. So we'll come to a dog pose. It's a nice way to measure. You just step the foot forward. You can also come from a table and just bring the front leg forward. When you step your right foot forward, the knee wants to be over the heel. And from that right knee moving forward, as my chest is on my thigh, the left knee comes down. So resist the just like plunking down, heavy on that knee, plug the foot in. And from the right knee and the pubic bone moving forward, the left knee comes down. And that action of that slow descent is what's going to really balance and undo all the sitting that is done all day long. So the quads will lengthen, the hip flexor. And then without moving the hips back, this is the challenging part, unfold. So we're opening up the front of the hip in the back leg, and eventually the back of the hip in the front leg. Take your arms up, makes it easier. Plug that back foot in. So you anchor and you yearn forward. You take the hands wide, it's a little bit easier for the shoulders. Spin the armpits forward. And eventually you can imagine how you would bend the elbows, bend the back knee, and you'd be holding the back foot. Not in today's class. Release the arms, roll the shoulders. We'll change sides, and I'm going to just turn to do this from the side. So step back to a dog pose, and then bring your left foot forward. So from the side view, you'll be able to see how we really measure up. Front knee, front heel. So not this, here. See my back foot, heel over the ball of the foot. A lot of people have either the heel too far forward, which distorts the measure, or hanging back, which puts a lot of pressure or a disintegration in the lower back. So find your measure, heel under the knee, and heel over the ball of the foot. And then think the pubic bone goes forward, and here's where you're getting that length of the quad and the back leg, that slow descent without letting the heel come forward. So it's like, oh, you're holding your ground, you're getting the length of the quads. This way, when you plug in the foot, the knee is light. When you plunk down on the knee, that's why people think they have to put a blanket under their knee. They don't. They just have to keep moving the hips forward. And so now you can see from the side, my front knee and my back knee is a diagonal line that goes through the perineum. There's no angle through the pelvis. And when I mean that, like often people are here. And when your pelvis is back here, so you have not only got this angle, but now the pelvis is putting pressure, right? More weight's going through the back knee and into the heel rather than the ball of the front foot. So when I'm really forward, anchored back and moving forward, I can lift this front heel. I can lift the arms. Ah, so good. It's really undoes all the sitting. And you should really be in the balls of the feet that you can be able to like, oh, I can lift up. It's buoyant. It's bouncy eventually. Hands down, come back through a dog, and just bring the knees down. And here's where you're going to need that blanket now. Kapotasana. So I'm using the blanket to elevate the floor. I want my pelvis to be level, even though it's an asymmetrical pose. We've been doing the right side first. Again, I like to come from a dog. Just lost my AirPod. Come from a dog pose so the hips are higher. It's easier to bring the front leg forward. So imagine you're going to bring your right knee on the diagonal to the right. 2 o'clock position. My pubic bone can be at 12 o'clock. Okay? Common misalignment, they bring their knee forward. Well, that's not going to really get the opening of all of those deep, juicy, external rotator muscles of the hip. Okay? There's like 6 of them. This can just cause you to dump, just like you would be sitting on your couch. But this is yoga class. We want to measure up. So bring that knee out to the right, the 2 o'clock position. I like to bunch up, make a little bit of a height underneath. So I'm really plugged in. I can feel that that blanket comes right up underneath me. And then I find the center. Hands go wide, so there's less weight in the arms, right? We don't want to be here. We want to be here. My brain goes to my back foot, finds the pinky toe side of that foot, which also moves me off of my right butt. And then I come forward. So we're doing the really fun and nicer version of Kapotasana. We're not doing the deep back bend right now. Think you're going to pull the chest forward and pull the contents of the belly out of the bowl of the pelvis. Some of you can bring the elbows down without letting the back overtake the front, right? So we don't want to come down if it's like this. That's actually not really getting into the pelvis. So find your corners. Right buttock bone goes back, left armpit goes forward, pubic bone goes forward, and then eventually you're like, it's always the front body. The front body is the potential comes forward. Piece of you anchors back, finds the left toenails. And you can feel where this is really working. Walk the hands back. And the fingertips, again, it's light. And then you can play with adding another fold, because every time you fold another joint, like origami, the pose is more difficult. So you can just bend the back knee. Oh, now we're getting into the quads again, just like in our last pose, in Anjaneyasana. And then maybe you can even reach back and make contact, kick the foot into the hand. So we did do a little bit of the back bending version. And then we'll change sides. Up to a dog. Left knee forward. This time find that 10 o'clock position. And just like in all of our poses, we'll have an easier side and a harder side. Now, the easier side doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It could feel easy to you because it's just a habit, right? Again, like if you always sit on your left butt, you could think that this is an easy side, but yet there's just a lot of collapse that's happening and not increasing mobility or strength in this left hip. I'm just creating more compression, which can lead me down quicker to an injury. And again, in yoga, most of the injuries that happen are repetitive motion injury where there's not a lot of mindfulness. So I have to come out of this left hip. You can see my pelvis isn't level. I have to find the middle. And then when I just got off my butt, that's when I'm now getting the opening and suddenly it's full of sensation. Take your hands wide. Find the baby toe side of the back foot. Think your right hip moves out to the right. Now I'm in the middle of myself. I slide forward. Front body forward. So pubic bone to navel. Navel to sternum. Sternum to chin. And then I'm going to add an extra fold without collapsing. Elbows down. You still see my chest. versus this, right? So Kapotasana is pigeon pose. It's not like this one. I always call it run over pigeon. It's not that. You're laying yourself down over your leg, and eventually this feels so good. One other cue that I want you to think about, you see my ankle here, inner ankle. There's no wrinkling. My outer ankle is actually off the floor. So by reaching through the inner heel and pulling that left buttock bone back, there's space in the knee. So a lot of people feel pinching in the front knee in pigeon, and then they're collapsing and like all their weight into it. So if that's the case for you, you can do this supine figure 4 until you can get this alignment where you're not sickling the foot and the buttock bone's moving back and the pubic bone is straight forward. So even just having that information can take a lot of the pressure off the knee. Okay. Next pose. Baddha Konasana. So I'm going to stay on this blanket. Just bring your back leg around. So Baddha Konasana or cobbler's pose. If you're in children's yoga, they call it butterfly pose. Always sit on a blanket. It's a little pedestal for your pelvis. And I have a second one here, and I just want to show you the difference. So soles of the feet together. This pose is very hard to not really tuck and feel like you're really behind yourself and lose your lumbar curve. So just by sitting upright, drawing your legs in. So the arms are straight, holding the ankles, and the chest is lifted. And that will give you the measure of really your foot between the pubic bone and the heels. Universal measure is to really have a block. There you go. Nailed it. So you can hold the ankles, find the back bend. That's also going to rock you a little forward on the buttock bones. The buttock bones, or the ischial tuberosities, are the pedestals of the pelvis. Think that your knees go out, and the more you can direct the femur out on their own trajectory, you'll get more space in the acetabulum, the hip socket. And then you can make this a little bit more challenging by pressing the heels together. So if you press the outer heels together, your knees will drop a little bit and you'll get more of the stretch all along the adductor muscles. If you press your inner heels together, you see my knees just floated up a little bit, it'll be more of an eccentric contraction because I'll be engaging and lengthening. So press the inner heels together and then keep that as you press the outer heels together. Oh, so good. Opening up the inner seam of the legs. We don't sit with our legs wide like this. We don't walk around with our legs wide like this. So this is a place in the mobility of the hips that can be a little bit challenged, a place that feels tight but is also weak, because we much more tend to be quad dominant and outer thigh dominant than hamstring or inner thigh dominant. All right, another one for the inner legs. Wide, Upavishta Konasana. Now again, they can just be a little bit wider than mats with distance apart. And because I'm on a blanket, I'm going to be very careful that I'm not hyperextending the knees. So I can slight bend in the knees. If you think about a seesaw, if I bend the knee, the bottom of the femur is up, which means the top of the femur is more down. So this can give people more of a space in the front of the hip where the femur comes, where there tends to be like the labrum, the unique cartilage around the inside of the hip joint, can get compromised, or you can feel like you're just stuck, like there's a hard stop there when the leg is down, right? And what we really want to do in Upavishta Konasana is fix the femurs, feel like they're glued to the ground, and it's the pelvis that turns. So in some way, we're always moving the legs, internal and external rotation. We're moving the legs in flexion and extension. Here we're kind of flipping the origin and the insertion, and with the legs slightly bent, heels on the ground, we're turning the pelvis. So I'm not rounding the back. So when the hip joints are stuck or you're locked up or you don't feel like you have a lot of mobility, again, just like in pigeon pose, we come forward by rounding the back. All you're doing there is creating a scenario where you're reversing the lumbar curve and you could be more down a line to injury. So instead, feel like you're going to stick your butt out. You're going to roll or rock to the front edge of the sitting bones. And just doing that could be enough for you, because suddenly Going from this position where nothing is happening here to this position, like, oh, that's where we want to feel the pose. And then your hands can be little stopgaps, right? Like, okay, I'm pulling forward, I'm lengthening through the crown of the head, so there's getting more and more and more space through the vertebra. And then, oh, maybe a little bit more. Maybe not. Go where you are feeling lengthening, but you can breathe, right? You can like have a conversation or just have a conversation with yourself. So go inside and feel all the wonderful things that are happening. You can rock a little side to side, so you're increasing one side and then the other. And eventually, maybe elbows are down. The perineum is really on the ground, and the tailbone is eventually facing back behind you. And I promise that this eventually feels so delicious. Come up. Legs together. We don't have this one, but let's do a little Paschimottanasana. I'm going to teach you, bend the legs. I want you to do Paschimottanasana, even if this is as straight as your legs go. Remember the armpit to the mitt? So this is it. We're not going to be compromising our back. You're going to 1 foot forward and then the other. If I were on just the ground, the legs slide forward. I'm holding the feet, or you can have the hands on the ground. Chest stays on the thighs. So you can see from this side, there's so much contact that's happening the whole time. So this is really about, oh good, I can slide my butt back. Knees still go to the armpits. This is about opening up the back of the legs like we did in Parsvottanasana, both legs at the same time, which is much harder. It's not about jamming the legs straight. Most people in Paschimottanasana, they'll feel it like it's more in their back and they're tucking their butt. You can see I have a nice even arc here, and it's almost like the buttock bones are moving back, and that propels me forward. And then one more pose for the front of the thighs, Supta Virasana. I'm going to just show this on a block, which a lot of people need, because the flexion in the hip and the knee and the plantar flexion in the ankle is difficult for us Western bodies, our Western bodies. Take your hands, press your thighs down. So my knees are in line with the hip bones. They don't have to be totally together, but I don't want them splayed apart. And the heels are outside of the butt. So the toes are turning in slightly, and you can see the whole top of the foot is on the floor. And for a lot of people, they don't have that degree of plantar flexion, and this is why Virasana feels horrible on the toes and the tops of the feet. If that's the case, put a blanket underneath your shins. So this is going to create this little bit of a lift in the floor. And so now that's much more comfortable for the majority of people. So come right to the crease of the ankle and then put something underneath your butt. This is your Virasana, and suddenly there's ease. Eventually, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So the Supta Virasana, the reclined version, is really one that opens up the quads. But if I'm on a block, I don't want to, can't keep me all the way down. Think your knees go forward. Turn, shoulders, external rotation, and then just take your hands down. Aim the knees forward. Aim your tailbone energetically so you don't get stuck in the back. Aim your tailbone down or even towards, like it's reaching for the heels, beyond the heels, or even for the backs of the knees. Now, eventually, when you are if you're all the way down, or when you're all the way down, and you don't even have something underneath you, eventually you can begin to feel how, oh, now this is really beginning to lengthen the quads. Oh, now I'm really down. Now I can aim the tailbone towards the backs of the knees. And then eventually you can stay here absolutely. Elbows under the shoulders, collarbones pulling apart, sternum lifting up to the chin. Eventually you're down all the way down in Supta Virasana. You can even take the arms up overhead. This is like intense for the quads, especially if you are quad dominant, right? Especially if you do a lot of running, climbing, cycling, and anything that's going to even build that more. And then our last pose is Tadasana again. After all that work, opening the fronts, the backs, the insides, the outsides of the legs, come back and stand in Tadasana, which in Iyengar's book, Light on Yoga, is like the first pose, and it's a level 4 of difficulty, right? Oh, I have so much sensation in my legs, like all the way up. Notice what you notice. Right? Are you standing on your own 2 feet better? Do you feel more communication down to the ground and more buoyancy, more lightness, more not having to like do it all from the shoulders or the low back, right? Everything should be humming. Firm the legs. Take a big breath in, arms all the way up. Bring the hands down through that center line. You work on your mobility every day, or if you're hypermobile, I didn't talk about this, but this whole series can be done just through the lens of strength. Some of us need more, some of us need less, right? The goal is when you come back to Tadasana again, you are balanced, you're more whole. Everything is working in proper proportion so you can enjoy all the things that you love to do. Right? It's not so you can be good at yoga. It's so you can be good at life and you can move better so you feel better. I'm Kari Herendorf for Better Yoga. Have a beautiful day.